Welcome to American History Lesson 7. Nationalism. Our lesson objectives are: identify and understand the different economic growth of the United States, identify how the United States worked to unite and expand the country, identify and understand the actions behind the continued impact of Europe on the United States, identify and understand the controversy surrounding America's political process. The impact of technology on the economy of the United States. In the early 1800s, the Industrial Revolution that began in England spread to the United States. In the past, workers made one product at a time. The Industrial Revolution of the United States allowed business owners to mass produce the product. They hired teams of workers who worked in factories that were largely powered by water. Using interchangeable parts, the workers began to produce more products in less time than before. The past troubles with England helped speed along these changes. As the embargo halted American shipping overseas, investors then put their money into building factories. The New England states began the American Industrial Age. The first factories were textile mills, but other industries soon followed suit and began mass production of goods. The Old Northwest Territory was mostly agricultural, though farming techniques were changing. Farm families began to raise livestock and crops for sale using the cash they earned to buy supplies. Laborers in the North were usually free men because all states north of Delaware had abolished slavery by 1804. Even as slavery was abolished in the North, the practice was growing in the South. Eli Whitney's new invention, the cotton gin, made it possible to grow more cotton, as the textile mills in both Great Britain and New England were increasing their demand for cotton. Southern farmers turned their land into huge cotton fields. Because of this increased demand for cotton, slavery increased too. Uniting a divided country. As the regions developed their own distinct economies, leaders were thinking of ways to unite them. President Madison proposed a plan that Henry Clay of Kentucky adopted, called the American System. The plan called for increased taxes on foreign manufactured goods, which allowed American industry to grow. The American System included a national bank to establish a national currency. The American plan was made internal improvements that included building roads that would make it easier to transport goods. The federal government did not fund these internal improvements, but many states did. Some joined to build the national road that made it easier for settlers who were headed west. New York built the Erie Canal that connected New York City to the Great Lakes. This increased trade to and from New York City, and eventually New York City became the country's main port. In a Supreme Court decision, Chief Justice John Marshall increased the power of the federal government. One of these decisions was Gibson versus Ogden, in which the court ruled that Congress, not the states, had the power over commerce or trade between the states. Secretary of State John Quincy Adams enacted foreign policies that were guided by nationalism. He negotiated treaties with Britain that reduced the number of Navy ships on the Great Lakes and finally settled some of the long-standing boundary disputes. Adams brought Florida into the United States by signing a treaty with Spain. Fun fact, the purchase of Florida from Spain caused the United States to take responsibility of Spain's $5 million debt to American citizens. Military hero Andrew Jackson was appointed Florida's military governor. Growing pains of the United States. There were threats in the Western Hemisphere from foreign nations too. Spain and Portugal wanted to reclaim their lost colonies that had recently become independent. Russia attempted to claim additional land on the western coast of North America. President James Monroe warned European nations to cease interfering with any nation in the Western Hemisphere. As their population increased, new territories wanted to officially become states. The slavery issue made this a difficult process. Both the North and South were happy as long as there remained an equal number of slave and free states. The balance was upset when Missouri applied for admission because Missouri allowed slavery. Clay created the Missouri Compromise that allowed Missouri to enter as a slave state but allowed Maine as a free state. The Missouri Compromise stated that slavery would be illegal in all territories north of the 3630 northern longitude with the exception of Missouri. In the election of 1824, Andrew Jackson won the most popular votes, but did not have the electoral votes to win the election. The decision was given to the House of Representatives to decide. Because Henry Clay disliked Jackson, he used his personal and political influence to help Adams win the election. Adams' term was difficult for him. Because he lost the election, Jackson and his followers split to join another party called the Democratic Republican Party. They led a political attack on Adams during his term, and the country began to favor Jackson. Jackson won the support of thousands of Americans who had recently given the right to vote by more liberal election laws. In 1828, Jackson won the election by a wide margin. During his term, Jackson removed approximately 10% of federal workers and replaced them with workers loyal to him. This became known as the spoils system or patronage. Demanding more farmland, people began to convert the Native Americans' land in the South and the West. Jackson wanted to force the Native Americans to move from their lands. To achieve this, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. The Cherokee nations fought this removal in the courts. Chief Justice Marshall ruled in favor of the Native Americans, but Jackson refused to honor the ruling. Instead, federal agents signed a treaty with Cherokee leaders who were willing to leave their lands. In 1838, the Army forced the remaining 20,000 Cherokee to march west. Because more than a quarter of their population died on this journey, the Cherokee named it Trail of Tears. By 1828, the tariff of 1816 was raised twice. This increased the price of foreign manufactured goods. Even though he previously supported the tariff, John C. Calhoun of South Carolina became strongly opposed to it. Southerners felt as if they were financing industry in the North because they had little industry. Calhoun believed that states could nullify any federal law that they were opposed to. As the Senate argued the tariff in 1830, a South Carolina senator declared that the tariff was a threat to the South and to individual states' rights. Massachusetts Senator Daniel Webster presented the idea that the Union was created by the people, not the states. This continued for 2 years until Congress passed a new tariff and the South Carolina legislature declared that it was not legal. President Jackson threatened South Carolina with federal troops to force them to obey the law. Henry Clay made the suggestion to lower the tariff over time. This compromise was accepted by the people. Another political issue facing Jackson was his opposition to the Bank of the United States. Thinking that the bank was a threat to democracy, he nicknamed it the Monster. He withdrew the Treasury's money, hoping that this would force the bank to close. Panic ensued when the bank's president called in all loans for immediate repayment, and the bank lost the little remaining support. The bank closed when its charter expired in 1836. New York City became the nation's financial capital after the collapse of the bank. Clay, Webster, and others were angered by Jackson's attack on the bank, and they took an opportunity to form a new political party called the Whigs. Jackson retired after his second term, and his vice president, Martin Van Buren, won the next election. He inherited a financial mess caused by the collapse of the bank. Because Van Buren was unable to stabilize the national economy, he lost the 1840 election to William Henry Harrison, the Whig candidate. Harrison died about a month after he took office, though, and John Tyler became president. The Whigs had little success in creating new laws based on their ideas because Tyler did not support their political positions. During the Jackson presidency, politics changed a great deal. Candidates needed to campaign to win the office and depended on the popular support of the nation's citizens. Average people became more political savvy and had more influence than in the past. What next? Take the time to go back and review the lesson on your own. After the review, complete the lesson review for the lesson and submit your grading. Remember, your submission should follow all the rules for standard written English. All submissions must be written in your own words and sources used cited at the end. How to cite sources in APA format. When you reference a source within an APA-style paper, whether it is using a direct quote, repurposing an image, or simply referring to an idea or theory, you should insert an in-text citation, the author's surname, and the date of publication within parentheses, straight after a direct quote. CitationMachine.net will assist you in creating citations.